My name's Rick Moody, and I wrote about Connecticut.
Of all the different ways that you could have written about Connecticut, you chose the Merritt State Parkway.
Well, the Merritt Parkway is really memorable to me because after my parents divorced in 1970, it was the road that connected one parent to the other on visitation day. So I used to drive back and forth on it every weekend. So it has a bittersweet and memorable quality. It's a really beautiful parkway. Besides, I'd say one of the most beautiful in the Northeast. So one passes through and has a kind of inflated idea of what's happening in the state because of its pristine veneer as we experience it on the parkway.
As opposed to, say, I-95.
I-95 is, as everybody knows, a vision of the lower circles of hell.
If you were going to add a state symbol to describe Connecticut, like state breakfast or state chewing gum, or a state recreational activity, what comes to mind?
A prescription for birth control pills. Is that enough?
You don't live very far from Connecticut, but it doesn't sound like you're moving back anytime soon.
I mean, it's changed dramatically since I was there, but it had its sinister qualities in the 70s and 60s as well. It's just homogenous and culturally xenophobic, so it's not the place that I would want to live now at all. I mean, attractive, certainly if you're in the sort of beautiful, affluent suburbs, but kind of terrifying at the same time.
Near a lot, though. For instance, you were not far from New York City.
Yeah, well, the swamps of Jersey are near New York City too, but nobody lives there.
Have you ever lied about what state you're from?
No, I just wouldn't lie about that. I mean, I would love to lie about it, but I'm not that sort of liar.
Kind of curious about what kind of liar you are, but we'll leave that alone for now. So what do you want to know?
I'm the kind of liar who lies about having finished The Golden Bowl by Henry James.
So what were you going for when you thought, okay, I got 50 states to fill in and I got a bunch of writers with talent?
Well, we wanted it to feel like an organic mess, like a good stew. Not to have it be victory laps for the writers we all know and think of as being from a particular state. Sean and I both admire writers like Joan Didion on California or Garrison Keillor on Minnesota, my own state. But we wanted it to feel fresh and new, so some of the writers are writing about the state they're from. Other writers are writing about the state they've moved to or lived in for a long time. And then other writers still we assigned to places that they'd never been before because we thought it would be interesting to hear from a writer with that freshness that can only come from seeing a place for the first time. Dagoberto Gilb on Iowa.
Matt wanted me to go and find the Mexicanos in Iowa that are working there. Matt didn't want to go there either. He wanted to send a Mexican to write about the campesinos.
Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Ferris, and I'm going to be reading to you from Florida. I washed dishes next to a wiry drunk named Snake, presumably on account of the coat of tattoos he wore like a second skin. I wanted to know about girls, jail, tattoos, and anything he could tell me that might clue me in on how a life could be his. What he wanted to talk about in the same spirit and tone that I now hear friends talk about their newborns was rum.
We sent Will Blythe on a road trip through the great state of New Hampshire.
I happened to be covering the John Edwards campaign for Playboy magazine at the time. The people I met up in New Hampshire tended to view me as a very sort of perverse and belated representative of the sexual revolution.
John HODGMAN on Massachusetts.
Despite the occasional basketball championship, the sports teams when I was growing up were all losers. Famously, cursedly, the Boston Red Sox would lose again and again and again. And I loved this because it made sense to me. For sadness, grievance, anger, and frustration, this is what really pleases the Bostonian and inspires him.
I tell the campesinos how they all look like Subcomandante Marcos coming out from the jungle. After a moment to absorb my joke, they look at each other until they finally grin. This is good for now, the older says. It's what they have. After a pause, the younger one returns sincerely. Así es la vida.
I'm Susan Choi, and last summer I went on a road trip in Indiana with my aged father, a 40-year resident of that state in which I was born. The road we set out on from Bloomington was multi-lane and ugly, but soon we were winding through intimate countryside, in and out of dappled woods. It was on this pastoral, secretive road that we brought up my grandfather again. One time, my father remembered, when things were very bad, he'd caught a glimpse of his mother undressed and realized she was starving.
Since my piece is a graphic story, I drew the whole thing out. Vermonters are very independent, politically in all kinds of ways, and that was another theme of my essay was Vermont moved to secede from the country. That seems sort of exciting.